Okay, so welcome to my special review of a JDM, or I should say a true JDM reel. And what I mean by that is that this reel has no equivalent for sale here in the United States. So this is made just for the Japanese or Asian market, and we don't have an equivalent here for sale. Now that reel is the brand new 2017 Shimano Scorpion DC. And as you can see, it's a really slick looking reel. It's shiny black. It's got a little bit of red accent, so it's kind of stealth or murdered out, as some people may say. Now this is based off of a Curado 200i body, but it's got an entirely different braking system, which I'll go over in just a moment. Now just a brief history on DC reels. DC stands for digital control. The first digital control reel was the Shimano Calcutta CONQUEST DC. Now this reel came out way back in 2003, so that's what, almost 15 years ago. So yeah, this technology's been around for a long time. Shimano invented it or implemented it, designed it, tested it, and brought it out to the masses. I don't have that Calcutta DC, but I do have the second DC reel and the very first low profile DC reel, and that is the CALAIS DC, which is a 200 reel. Now this for a long time was considered the longest casting reel available. It had the most advanced digital control brake. It had 4 settings internally for wind, A for accuracy, L for long distance, and X for extreme distance, and then you can control those settings from the outside with this dial here. This reel is all metal. It's their top of the line reel, so it was really expensive. Here in America, this thing sold for $650, and this reel came out I think in 2006, so it's over 11 years old, and even back then it sold for $650, which was unheard of. So Shimano released several different DC reels and had several different iterations of the DC or digital control braking. Now these are the only 3 that I have. This one I bought back about 4 or 5 years ago. It's called EXSENCE DC. This is actually made for inshore saltwater fishing, and for the performance it gives and the features it has, it was a real steal. I believe they were around $400, and when the yen dropped, you can pick one up for around $300. For what this thing could do, it was the price was ridiculous. It's got special modes for night fishing, where you don't have to even use your thumb, because you know at night you can't see the lure hit the water. So you can go thumb free even when the lure hits the water. Big bait, fluorocarbon, and then you got your distance modes here where you go from maximum all the way to minimum. It's a solid reel, super smooth, really stealth looking, and for the cost it compares really nicely with that, but at a much lower price. So I stopped buying DC reels for a while until they had come out with this one here. Now this is the 2017 Scorpion DC, and I believe it replaced a previous Scorpion DC that came out I think in 2011. And the complaints about that reel were that it didn't cast very far at all, and it did not have the trademark DC whine, which you will see. Now Shimano heard these complaints. Now Granted, that reel I believe was meant for beginners or people just getting into bass fishing. So I believe it was probably overbraked on purpose, just so you would get no overruns or backlashes that would discourage a beginner. Now apparently they had changed everything with this. Now this uses the latest edition of DC braking. It's called Intelligent DC 5. Now this is the same braking system that you'll find on the $500 magnesium METANIUM DC, which is a really popular reel. But this reel costs half as much. I believe right now it's around $250. So relatively speaking, it is a bargain when it comes to DC reels. Now let's go over what DC is exactly. So you got your reels like DAIWA that use magnetic braking, and then of course you have Shimano that uses mostly centrifugal braking. But what is DC braking? So DC means there is a digital chip inside this reel and these reels that control electromagnets inside. So from what I've read, there's an optical sensor on the spool, somewhere on the spool, that once the digital chip senses an overrun, it'll apply the brakes only when necessary. So yeah, I mean, if you think that any other company, you know, comes out with the most advanced technology, no other company has anything even close to this. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, you know, if it's a digital chip, how do you power it? Does it use batteries? No, it does not. It self-charges itself with the kinetic energy from the cast. Now how cool is that? You don't need batteries. It self-charges itself on every cast. So that's really awesome. All right, now the one drawback of DC reels has been, if I'm going to open this up here and show you what I mean, is that due to the nature of the design, here's the brakes right here. Have you ever seen brakes like that? DC reels tend to be very heavy. You really cannot get a light spool in the DC reel. You can see, I believe this might be the electromagnet right here. So I'm going to pull the scale out and weigh this compared to a Curado. Okay, so I got my trusty cheapo scale out, and I'm going to weigh the spools here. Okay, so the current Curado I spool weighs in at 16.4 grams. And the Skorpion DC spool weighs in at 17.8 grams, so almost 18 grams. That's because they have to put the magnets attached to the spool. So what DC is great at is, since it only applies the brakes only when necessary, it allows you to have a much higher spool rotation, or RPM. So your spool can get up to much higher RPMs before the brakes kick in, which allow for theoretically a longer cast. Now let's go over the Intelligent DC 5 braking modes. Now the cool thing about this, it has 3 modes, and each mode has 5 settings. Now the 3 modes are designated for what kind of line you have. And of course we generally use 3 lines in bass fishing: braid, nylon, or monofilament, and fluorocarbon. So right here, N is for nylon or monofilament. In Japan they call braid PE, and then F for fluorocarbon. Now how you go in between modes is on the top here, there's an arrow. So right now it's set on mono. Now if you want to switch over to fluorocarbon or braid, you kind of take your hand and there, now it's set on braid. It doesn't have like a set click, a solid click to let you know you've hit the mode, but once you're in there, it's kind of loose, but you can feel there's resistance, so you know you're in the mode. If you want to go over fluoro, just click over there. So now I'm in fluoro mode. So once you've dialed in, chosen what line you want, you have external adjustment. See, right now you're on open. If you want to go open the side plate, you turn it to open. But the first adjustment is all around mode. Now for just general bass fishing, they say this is going to give you probably the best casting over a big range of baits. So if you switch baits a lot, they recommend going to all around, and that'll handle a wide range of different weighted lures. Okay, now the next one is 4. Now 4 will give you the strongest braking, and this is for your lighter lures. Now in the past, most DC reels were not known for its light lure capabilities. I believe there was only one reel designed for light lures. That was the Cardiff DC. They don't make that anymore. Now in mode 4, it says that it's designed for lure weights of 5 to 8 grams. So that's about 3/16 of an ounce up to a little bit over 1/4 of an ounce. It's going to give you the strongest braking. Okay, now here's 3. 3 is designed for 1/4 of an ounce up to about 3/8 to almost 1/2 an ounce. So it's going to give you less braking force. And then there's 2. 2 is designed for about 3/8 of an ounce all the way up to 3/4 of an ounce. That's going to give you even less braking. And then number 1 is going to give you the least amount of braking. This is recommended for heavy aerodynamic lures that are dense and can fly really far. And it's rated for lures of 3/4 of an ounce, 5/8 of an ounce, I'd say, all the way up to 1 ounce. And of course there's your open to open the side plate. Now of course you still have your spool tension adjustment. Now I've been playing around with this. I've had this reel for almost a month. I've been really impressed. I haven't had it out against the Curado to see what casts farther, but it's definitely a little bit more fun to use. You don't really have to adjust it as much per lure. As you can see, the bodies are exactly the same. So I would basically call this a top of the line Curado. So I'm going to get that out on the field. I hear that the fluorocarbon mode is really good for skipping, and I'm definitely going to try that out. Going to test it out against the Curado. Of course, you know, it can't be the real test if you don't compare it against something. And I will get back to you guys. Thanks. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention was that despite being the same body frame and side plates, the Skorpion DC is actually listed as a 100 line capacity, as you can see there. Now, how they did this was they modified the spool as you can see right here, to where the line, they narrowed it by a few millimeters so it'll hold less line. As you can see right there, they've pushed this in and basically narrowed the area where the line lays. So that makes it hold less line. And I believe you can see another thing with DC reels, they are also shallow. You can't hold a lot of line. So that's why they classify it as 100. And I believe that will aid in casting performance, because the less line you hold, the lighter your spool will be. I think I smell a shootout coming on with this and the TATULA SV, just for skipping. What do you guys think?